Wednesday, May 18, the Nigeria Labour Congress made true the threat to take to the streets across the country to protest the unilateral increase in pump price of petrol by the federal government. In the history of the labor movement, never has a crack such as this been witnessed. Not only were the two labor centers divided on the decision to embark on the strike, Nigerians were also divided. In spite of these divisions, the Nigeria Labour Congress and our civil society allies, under the umbrella of the Joint Action Front, JAF, dared to struggle. Though the attempt to shut down the economy was not attained, street protests were resorted to. In the trail was heavy vehicular jams in states where it was observed. Strong emotions attended build-ups to the protest rallies. On your program Policy on Track today, we shall bring you these undercurrents: the aborted meetings, efforts by the federal government to stop NLC from embarking on the strike, given its impact on the already weak economy. Still in your bouquet for today is the workshop organized for leaders of trade unions in West Africa, held in Abuja. The workshop is meant to develop a new strategic plan for the next 5 years for the Organization of Trade Unions in West Africa, OTUA. The ultimate aim is to see that governments and employers across the continent come to appreciate that trade unions are vital components of Africa's democracy. My name is Mo Wilkie, your host, and you are welcome. Before we go into the body of the program, let's bring you news making rounds in the world of work in the last 1 week. The Nigerian Labour Congress has suspended the strike it embarked upon on Wednesday, May 18, across the country. In a statement signed in Abuja Sunday evening, the NLC President Ayuba Waba says Congress is committed to genuine dialogue within the framework of internationally established and recognized principles of representation. He emphasized that Congress will continue to resist wrong legislations, policies, and programs, and will always act in the best interests of Nigerians. Solidarity messages by international trade union bodies have poured in for the Nigeria Labour Congress following the nationwide strike against the latest fuel pump price increase. One of such bodies is the African Regional Organization of the International Trade Union Confederation, ITUC Africa. The solidarity message to workers and the people of Nigeria, who according to the body are forced once again to protest yet another hike in the price of premium motor spirit, PMS. These increases are coming at a time Nigerian workers are facing serious economic and social challenges, especially from delayed and non-payment of salaries by almost half of the states of the Federation. ITUC Africa says it agrees with the NLC and our civil society allies that the increases are badly timed and not consistent with the pledges made by this government to the Nigerian people. In his message to the NLC President Ayuba Waba and Secretary Peter Ozoeson, the American Federation of Labor and Congress of Industrial Organization, AFL-CIO, says, on behalf of its 12.5 million members, it is expressing its solidarity with the NLC. The Americas unions note that the strike was called to protect Nigerian workers and to ensure that their voices are included in discussions that impact them directly. The international trade union groups want the federal government to continue on the path of genuine and exhaustive dialogue with the NLC. The Joe Ajaero-led faction of the Nigeria Labour Congress has asked the federal government to reconstitute the board of the Petroleum Product Pricing Regulatory Agency, PPPRA. In a signed agreement with government, the Congress says the PPPRA board is the only body recognized to fix the price of petroleum products by the Constitution. Speaking to journalists in Lagos Friday, Joe Ajero said the agreement signed after an alignment with the Trade Union Congress of Nigeria (TUC) and the federal government described any increase in petroleum products as illegal without the Petroleum Product Pricing Regulatory Agency Board.
For almost 4 years or more, that board has not been reconstituted. So in order to do this and run away from any accusation of illegality, we now agree that the board of PPPRA should be reconstituted within 2 weeks.
The Congress wants a committee that will be all-inclusive to be set up also to avoid the mistake of sure P.
This time around, the issue of the palliative will not be managed like what happened in the sure P issues. Now the palliative this time around will be a transparent one. It will be an issue that accountability will be rendered at all times.
Must be handled by a body where labor, civil society, even Congress of Nigerian political parties and all students, market women, to make sure that the exercise is not just rich, but it is all inclusive, and Nigerians who it is meant for equally benefit from it.
Recall that the crack in the NLC became deep as the federal government attempted to negotiate with labor leaders after the recent hike in fuel price. The Nigeria Labour Congress says if policies of government are right, it will always get the support of organized labor, but any anti-people, anti-labor policies will be resisted by workers, which NLC is set to always give platform to. This is exactly what played out since Wednesday, May 18, after a walkout by the NLC during a meeting with the federal government representatives. Labour insists its position has not changed since 2012. It argues that instead of government to address the scam in the subsidy regime, ensure that local refining begins, government has chosen to depend solely on importation of refined products for the domestic consumption of Nigerians. NLC says, with this logic of government, price petroleum products will continue to shoot, while inflation will continue to rise. Meanwhile, real wage has fallen to all-time low. The inability of Labour and government to reach a common ground led the National Executive Committee of NLC to call Nigerians out to protest the hike.
We have said clearly that this policy certainly is against the people, because if you leave this very essential commodity to market forces, it then becomes very clear that we don't even have an end to price increase. Because one, if we continue to import against making our refineries to work, then it is also to entail that this policy issue will continue to be used to exploit Nigerians.
We are not protesting against phrases of liberalization, price modulation, deregulation or removal of oil subsidy. We are protesting the attack on the livelihoods of Nigerians, on their well-being, on their social and economic condition that has been made worse by some of these price increases. That is what we are protesting.
A tiny crowd, in comparison with the last time a protest like this was carried out in the city. But still, the protesters march on, undeterred. The route for them is familiar, as they peacefully voiced their opposition to the hike in fuel pump price by the federal government.
Nigerian people are unhappy. Nigerian people, you cannot injunct Nigerian people from protesting an illegal and unlawful policy.
If we are already in default and in contempt of the law, you must first of all purge yourself of that contempt before you can proceed and access the court.
Slow traffic behind them, police officers watching closely to ensure there is no breach of security.
Lot of sweat, really, who wouldn't? It's been a long walk all the way from the Labour House in Yaba all through Korodu Road.
Then, the first encounter with the police.
No, once you say, oh, they are old, that means you are saying that you want to be violent.
That's resolved. Another lies ahead, but the crowd is insistent on getting to its destination despite the police barricade. Walking through the heavy vehicular traffic, the protesters arrive at the outer Murtala Mohammed Airport, and their leaders take turns to address them.
The policy of subsidy removal goes beyond today. The after effect is what we are resisting for Nigeria. This struggle is a struggle we must begin to struggle to change the system.
What is going on now is a war of liberation. Let's ask ourselves, in the study of history, has any ruling class ever given power voluntarily?
From here, the crowd disperses, but with a promise to be back the next day with a more forceful action.
It is day 2 of the protest and strike called by the NLC. The atmosphere at Berger Junction in Abuja, where the NLC national leadership shifted its mobilization drive, was not as charged as was the case at Labour House, venue of the first day of the strike and protest.
But the issue goes even beyond the number. The issue is about standing with the people, even if you are standing alone.
NLC President Ayuba Waba is leading the protest through the streets of Abuja, even though many workers and unions who didn't pull out of the strike are seen going about their usual businesses. Waba is insisting that it is the right of citizens to challenge government policies that are detrimental to their overall well-being.
You remember the Public Order Act, which has not been nullified by a court of competence, to say that citizens have a right under the Constitution and under Universal Charter to actually protest policies if they are not comfortable with such policies.
While Ayuba Waba is marching through the streets of Abuja City, Boboy Kaigama, president of the Trade Union Congress, is cooling off in his office. He tells me why the TUC opted out of the action.
TUC on his part have discovered that at 86 naira 50 kobo, and NNPC does not have the capacity to supply 100% of the domestic consumption.
Kaigama is however not comfortable about government's decision to enter into any discussion with the Joe Ajero group. Tinubu and his delegation were received by the NLC president Ayuba Waba, who had cut short the third day of the declared protest and strike over the hike in petrol pump price. Tinubu opened his talks by admitting that he is in support of any government's decision over the issue of fuel subsidy removal.
I cannot say I wasn't a part of whatever is happening today on your side, and I cannot say I was not a part of the decision that created this. I can only say I noticed the communication gap. I cannot say that you are enemies of progress or the president of this country.
Tinubu, along with his team, were virtually begging the NLC to return to the negotiating table with the federal government.
I want to appeal to you and come to beg, not as a bribe. I come on behalf of my party. I come on behalf of our government. It's our collective government.
Reacting to the plea, Waba, who expressed discontentment over government's decision to recognize and enter into talks with the Joe Ajero group, promised to meet with the appropriate organs of the NLC to consider the plea.
We have never at any time refused discussion or negotiation.
What actually happened is that when we reached a deadlock, government said we should excuse them. And they started playing this issue of divide and rule.
After the visit, Waba left immediately to rejoin his protesting members, leaving many wondering if Tinubu's plea will lead to a suspension of the already 3-day-old strike and protest. On Sunday night, after its emergency National Executive Council meeting, the Ayuba Waba-led NLC suspended its over 3-day-old strike and protest over the recent petrol pump price increase.
NEC, after due consultation with its constituents, resolved to suspend with immediate effect the action it commenced on Wednesday, May 18, 2016. The action is thus hereby suspended. Congress will resume negotiation with the government on twin issue of hike in the tariff and increase in pump price of products and any other issue that may arise thereof.
The suspension for now draws the curtain on the streets protest and strike by Ayuba Waba-led NLC, who gathered in numbers and obstructed work in a number of sectors, despite an industrial court order.
The sub-regional workshop provided opportunity to share experiences on the challenges that face trade unions nationally, regionally, and continentally. The participants explored a range of possible solutions to the most pressing challenges faced by workers. They also had the chance to share experiences from regional configurations in terms of the degree of support and solidarity they would offer when most required. The Minister of Labour and Employment, Chris Ngige, declared the workshop opened in Abuja, the nation's capital.
West Africa is made up of both the smallest countries like Cape Verde and the very large ones like Nigeria. There are a multiplicity of languages and mix of traditional cultures. But what typifies many of these countries in this region is the passionate desire for democracy and development. This is also reflected in the history of trade union. In fact, many pioneering national political leaders were schooled in the trade union movement before embarking in the struggle for national independence. So, as the leaders of the trade unions gather, the interest of workers' rights across the region was germane to them. Declaring the workshop open, the Labour Minister Chris Ngige encouraged the workers' representatives not to allow their countries be dependent on external forces to process the abundant national resources the continent is blessed with.
In Nigeria and other West African sub-region, we are all facing a global economic downturn. In Nigeria, this is due to the fact that we were a mono-economy country. We didn't plan so well over the years, and we relied on oil as the only major source of our revenue. The price of oil has dipped, and so the chicken came home to roost. In other West African countries, the price of cocoa has also gone down. The price of gold has also gone down, solid minerals, and therefore there is what looks like a threat to the economic fortunes of the countries in our sub-region. Therefore, this situation calls for OTUA to assist the governments and the employers of labor to look elsewhere. And looking elsewhere is for us to go into diversification.
The Nigerian Labour Congress emphasized the need for more recruitment in the movement and called for trade unions to be ready to fight corruption in the region.
Trade unions should advocate for industrialization and trade among nations on the African continent. One of the fundamental problems of the sub-region is endemic corruption and impunity, which has permitted all phases of our national life and is largely responsible for retarded development in West Africa. Another avenue that facilitates siphoning of dire needed funds for development in Africa has been capital flight occasioned by operations of multinationals and illicit financial flows that have found their way to further enrich the rich world. It is pertinent to draw government's attention on the need to drastically review tax incentives offered to companies in the name of attracting foreign investment, as evidence, does not support mutual benefits for these countries.
After the opening ceremony, participants went into the workshop, major part of which was devoted to analyzing the many challenges faced by the working family and the best way to address them.
Why this new move for UTUA?
The International Labour Organization started reactivating the Organization of Trade Union of West Africa about 3 years now. And this is because we know Africa regional integration is very important. That cannot be achieved only at the regional level. Also, the sub-regional organizations must be able to pull together for this particular initiative.
You want to mention some of these challenges that workers in the sub-region face?
There are a number of challenges. Rising unemployment is one of the challenges. Issues of migration crisis and a number of young people that in the process of wanting to go to Europe for greener pastures die in either the Sahara Desert or in the sea is another crisis, is another challenge. We also want, as the single most organized civil society group in the West African sub-region, work to ensure that democracy in the respective countries of the sub-region stabilize and deliver on the promises to improve on the living condition of the workers of the sub-region.
A major concern for organized labor working people is the right to freedom of association and collective bargaining. With organizations well established at the national level, it is important, it makes it easier to come together to deal with other developmental challenges that confront working people. In particular, the challenge of informalization of employment, the challenge of pervasive underemployment and unemployment, the challenge of poverty, low income security.
Do you see this, UTUA, do you see it as a solution to the myriads of problems faced by trade unions or workers generally?
On paper, we've analysed the crisis that we're in till we are blue in the face. We've developed alternative policies. We've pointed out the weaknesses of government policy. We've criticised the practices of rapacious multinational corporations that come in, take and leave with the profit and leave nothing behind. We understand the class contradictions of where we are at the moment. Our difficulty has been in translating that policy into practical solidarity measures down below. And by down below, I mean really down below, in working class and workers' communities, in their workplaces, and to get unions breaking away from just simply being resolutionary bodies to organisations that can organise workers around key demands.
What do you intend to get at the end of this programme?
Well, what we hope to get is a really concrete strategic plan to take the West African formation to transform it into an active body, so that it's no longer just concerned with paper policies and boardroom activity, but it's able to act as a coordinating body for solidarity across the region. That's what we want to see come out of this meeting.
We believe trade unions have a role to play in many aspects in the West African sub-region, on employment creation, on youth employment, on women issues, fighting Boko Haram and other terror agencies as well. It is the role of the unions, because at the end of the day, it is a worker who is affected.
As the executive secretary of this sub-regional movement, how do you intend to deploy your experiences to see that it works, that it delivers for the workers in this region?
We have a fairly extensive international network, and I'll call on this network in terms of programming, in terms of solidarity activities, in terms of drawing up education and research instruments for the overall benefit of the workers of the sub-region.
Do you see Ottawa succeeding?
I think Ottawa should succeed after reviving it, because there are a lot of regional integration programs that ECOWAS is undertaking. And if Ottawa inputs into the frameworks that is being implemented, it will make it easy for workers to have decent work at their workplaces.
That will be all for today. For your contributions and comments, please visit any of our social media platforms and drop your views. Let's do it again next week. I am Ogbone Wilkie. Bye-bye.